FoxyWriter Brandy Ackerley, coming to you with our next episode of Hunter's Gambit. First, I have to say that I was super excited by just how many people went to check out my video on Vroid last week. Oh, I got over 50 hits on my first day. It was kind of astounding to me. I am so glad that people found it so useful, though. Oh, I haven't gotten many people putting on to win the avatar that I made, but I am more than pleased that people are checking it out. I am thinking about trying to add a YouTube weekly stream to my list of events, starting sometime in December. I don't know what I'll be doing there yet, though. I'll have to see. If you have any suggestions on what you would like to see, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Let me know, okay? Lastly, I ended up having a tough week editing-wise. It was a tough week mainly because I realized after doing 3 to 4 chapters that I hadn't been using the copy that my editor sent me. So I had to go back and grab hers and then see what fixes she made, and then go through and add them to my already changed document separately. It was just a bit frustrating to have to go over those chapters twice. At any rate, I'm now fully and officially on chapter 6, but I've also managed to write 2 full chapters of a second novel. One not connected to the Kitsune Ken series at all. Oh, but it's so good! So good! I can't wait to do more with it this week. And now, for the update. Last week, we had one very important thing happen, and we learned a very important fact. First, Richard was attacked while Kazunoha was bathing, and the two had to work together to kill the creature before it killed them. What was the important fact we learned, though? Well, Kazunoha, much like all awesome anime main characters before her, can't cook. Which really isn't surprising. I mean, as much as Kazunoha wasn't really recognized by her family as any sort of equal growing up, their punishments weren't usually the cook us dinner sort. They had servants for that. Even if they were to punish her with that sort of servant work, they probably would have insisted on cleaning dishes or something, rather than just cooking. Still, I think that the best part of the entire interaction was Richard hiding that disability from her and just offering her the food that he was able to salvage from her cooking attempt. And now, on with the show. Okay, just let me get the book set up. Perfect! Okay. Another 2 days of travel, and Kazunoha felt like they were getting somewhere. She didn't think she'd ever been this far outside Edan before. Flat patches of drying mud and dirt covered everything Kazunoha could see to the north and east. The whole area, including their camp, stank faintly of sulfur, and the ocean air did nothing to clear it. There had been one other dry spot that hadn't stunk like this, an old stream bed. Though it was currently dry, there was evidence that mountain water still ran through it. Despite her protests, Richard had insisted that this campsite would be safer. Less chance of them waking up to water filling their tent while they slept. While she wasn't very impressed with the stink, she could hardly contain her excitement at being out in the world. She was glad to see that the camp was nearly set up. If she was lucky, they'd be done, and they could try to move someplace that smelled better. They were a little more than 100 feet up from the ocean, and it looked gorgeous from above. Orange and yellow rippling on an uneven blue. The ocean was always at its loveliest during late spring. "So, what do we work on now?" she asked Richard. Richard caught her gaze and shuddered. "While we still have sunlight, I want to inspect that cliff face, and see if we can get down to the water. If we need to do some exploring that is seaside rather than shoreside, I'll want to know it's safe. Plus, we may be able to add to our food stores by setting up a trap. There are lobsters around here, are there not?" "Work, but good work. and it would get her closer to the clean ocean air. She nodded. The lobsters are further out, I think. We might find crabs, though. The cliffs were nearly straight up and down in most places, but with Richard's help they managed to find some steps carved into the stone, uneven and eroding away. It was a treacherous path, but they took their time making sure that the steps would hold their weight. The beach was beautiful. Gray-brown sand, a shade lighter than the cliff walls, covered the distance between the water's edge and the cliff. A few shells and other flotsam showed that during the full tide, the water would climb up the cliff a short way. It should be safe enough down here for now, Kazunaha said, looking back out towards the water. It was rising, but they would have an hour or more before the beach was lost beneath the waves. We'll lose the beach at dawn and dusk, but we should be fine for the rest of the day. Richard didn't answer, having walked to a bulbous mass of rock protruding from a cliff face a couple dozen steps away. It looked like bubbles of dried sludge and mud. There was a crack or two near the ground above the cliff, where darker stone peeked through. Hey, Kazunaha, what do you make of this? I think this is the fall. The stream bed that we saw above used to end here in the ocean. The elders say that years ago a distant earthquake diverted the water to a lake further south. That riverbed is still getting water, Richard pointed out. It's still moist in some places. Kazunaha shrugged. Clearly it isn't getting enough to be a waterfall anymore. If anything, that moisture might make some of the mud overflow. Maybe that's what's coating it? Might be. Still weird, Richard said, staring up at it. He was grinning like a kid with a silver piece, told to buy as much candy as he wanted. Tired as she was, his pleasure was infectious. Don't you have landmarks like this from where you come from? She said with a laugh. He shook his head. Giza is flat, bound by tropical forest on one side and the sea on the other. Neither tends to change much. Not really. The plants grow bigger and longer and cover shit again. But that's it. There was a note of sadness in his tone. How long has it been since you left home? She asked. He grimaced, shaking himself from the mood. Too long, and the odds of ever going back again are slim. He silenced her with a wave of his hand. It would take months, even if I could. I may as well keep moving forward. Kazunaha touched his shoulder, but he moved away, picking up a tiny rock at his feet. With a well-placed throw, he chipped off some of the dried mud. The chunk crumbled, landing in a pile on the ground. Kazunaha picked up the largest chunk and dropped it again when it wriggled in her grasp. Richard gleefully grabbed the rock that had trundled away from her. Chipping away the mud from around the edges, he revealed a large crab, nearly the width of a small plate. Its pincers were sharp, but they looked more for digging than snapping. Eyes on stalks stared them down, and it clipped its claws menacingly. Did you bring a bag? Richard asked. Why? Are we collecting crabs now? She asked, a cautious grin in her voice. Yes. Honestly, it will be good to get some that we can keep alive at the camp. It's only been 5 days, but I would love to add some fresh food to our supplies. Also, if they're anything like the ones we had in Giza, they'll sell well, even if we don't end up eating them. Richard rinsed the creature off in the ocean water, revealing a mottled brown shell before he threw it into the bag she produced. A claw snapped, catching at some of the fabric. If we can catch enough, we'll have made a good profit when we head back, even if we don't find treasure. At least, if we return quickly enough. Kazunaha smiled. That's what I like to hear. The sun was only a sliver in the sky now. That mud doesn't look strong enough to support us. We'll try to mine it for a few days, using a knife and a rock to knock off the outer layers. For now, though, we'll head back to camp and see if these guys taste as good as the ones back home do. I don't want us trying to climb those steps in the darkness. Kazunaha smiled and looked up to the cliff. Her heart caught in her throat when she saw a shadow overhanging the cliff's edge. Richard, do you see that? She turned to him, pointing. He looked up from the bag, frowning. What did you see? She looked back up, blinking. Whatever she'd seen was gone. I thought I saw a shadow up there. I don't see anything now. Could you tell us what it was? She swallowed and shook her head. No. Maybe I'm just still worried about being out of town? Richard turned to her. If it is a monster and wasn't some sort of animal, we'll be prepared for it, and we can search the area again before we try to sleep. If something was up there, it has to have left tracks. We can move the camp if we need to. Come on, we better get up there as quickly as we can. He leaned over and kissed her. Kazunaha tried to ignore the flutter of her heart as Richard grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the darkening cliff face. And that was it. Let me just put the book back down so it's ready for next week. Perfect. Now, this chapter is particularly hilarious. I've referenced it before, but this chapter was one where I had horrible writer's block. I knew what was supposed to happen. I had it all plotted out. But what I'd plotted out just said, Kusu/Rich find clue to lead them to treasure. I had assumed that my big brain would come up with what I needed when I needed it to. Instead, it solidly refused to give me anything. While I was staring at my computer in annoyance, my friend was flipping through YouTube and found a video to watch. I don't remember anymore what the point of the video was, but when I glanced up, what I saw was orange-brown crabs scuttling across the screen. In a fit of frustration, I created this scene, trusting that my brain would then figure out a way that the crab could lead them to the clue. Of course, that clue didn't end up happening this chapter, and I ended up adding 2 to 3 new chapters to the book. I have to admit, this story is so much better for the change. It was a little too focused before, and I got some really great character interactions due to it. Because of that, I think that this is, technically speaking, my favorite chapter. Technically is in because of the writing, not actually because of how good the chapter is or what happens in it. But yes, technically, yeah, I think it might actually be my favorite chapter. It's the one place where, I really had to work to get that story written. So I look back at it as the place where I triumphed over my writer's block. Nowadays, I always suggest that if you're writing and you can't figure out exactly how the next chapter is going, or even the chapter you're on is going, add in something random. Whether it be a ninja attack, or a bear trundling by the character's campsite, or even just the discovery of a dinner plate-sized crab. Your mind will be working to figure out how the new part plays into your story. Even when you're not writing. It may take a few chapters to get there, though. Remember that. And, worst comes to worst, you can always edit that part out. Does it suck losing a chapter to edits? Well, yes, but, and I'm speaking from experience here, a lot of experience here. Sometimes you just need to write the bad to get to the good part. For you sports enthusiasts out there, think of it like a sport. If you're having a sucky practice day, you still have to put in the work the entire session, and just plan to have a better day the next time. And I think that's going to be all the time I have for today, though. I will see you next week. And remember to go to my Vroid video and make a comment if you want a chance to win the avatar that I made that session. All right. Oh, last remembrance. Remember to like the video. And if you like what I'm doing here, hit that subscribe button. If you really, really want to make my day, hit that little bell for notifications, or maybe even share the video with your friends. Okay? Alright, I will see you here next